Hidden in jars, drawers, and pocket change across America, some old and dirty wheat pennies could secretly be worth a shocking fortune. At first glance, they look like ordinary worn coins, but collectors know a thrilling secret. Certain rare dates and mint errors have sold for thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. Imagine discovering one in your spare change. Before you ignore that dusty penny, take a closer look because the next old wheat penny you find could turn a single cent into an unbelievable payday. What if I told you that a dirty little penny from 1939 could secretly be worth big money, thousands of dollars, maybe even life-changing value? Most people would toss it in a jar or leave it in their car cup holder. But collectors know something shocking. Some 1939 wheat pennies have turned into hidden treasure that shocked auction houses and changed ordinary pocket change into serious cash. And here's the crazy part. One might already be sitting in your house right now. Back in 1939, the United States was on the edge of a massive historical moment. The world was entering World War II, and everyday Americans were using simple copper pennies for groceries, bus rides, and newspapers. Millions of these pennies were minted that year, featuring the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed decades earlier by Victor David Brenner. But hidden among those ordinary coins were a few mistakes, rare mint marks, and unusual varieties that collectors today hunt like buried treasure. And if you've ever seen an old, dirty wheat penny from 1939, you might want to look a little closer, because the difference between a 1-cent coin and big money can be just a tiny detail. Let's start with the first thing you need to check. Look at the date, 1939. Then check just below the date for a small mint mark. If there is no mint mark, the coin was made in Philadelphia. If you see a small D, it came from Denver. And if you see an S, it was struck in San Francisco. Now here's where things start getting exciting. The 1939 S wheat penny is one of the first coins collectors look for. While millions were made, finding one in great condition today is surprisingly difficult. Many were heavily circulated during the late 1930s and 1940s. A worn example might be worth a few dollars, but a well-preserved one can jump to hundreds of dollars. And at major coin auctions, a nearly perfect 1939 S wheat penny has sold for over $3,000. That's right, a coin originally worth 1 cent becoming big money decades later. But wait, because the real hidden treasure might not be the mint mark at all. It might be an error. During the late 1930s, coin dies were used repeatedly until they began to wear out. Sometimes the metal dies cracked, shifted, or were engraved imperfectly. When that happened, coins came out with strange features, things collectors absolutely love today. One of the most fascinating varieties is the 1939 double-die wheat penny. This error happens when the design is stamped slightly twice, causing parts of the lettering or numbers to appear doubled. If you look closely at the words Liberty or In God We Trust, you might notice a shadow-like doubling. To the average person, it looks like nothing, but to collectors, that tiny doubling can mean life-changing value. Some confirmed double-die 1939 pennies have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. But here's another shocking detail that most people miss. Check the color of your coin. Collectors classify pennies into 3 color types: brown, red-brown, and red. A typical old penny that has circulated for decades will be dark brown. That's normal. But if you somehow find a 1939 wheat penny that still has bright red copper color, the value can explode. Why? Because bright red pennies mean the coin avoided circulation and oxidation for decades. A pristine 1939 red wheat penny can sell for thousands of dollars at auction. In fact, one stunning example graded near perfect by professional coin grading service sold for over $7,000. Imagine that. A penny smaller than your thumbnail, turning into big money hidden treasure. Now here's another quick trick serious collectors use. Look at the rim of the coin. The rim should be strong and well-defined. If the rim is weak, uneven, or slightly off-center, you might be looking at an off-center strike error. These errors happen when the coin blank isn't perfectly aligned when struck by the minting machine. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, these coins can be worth $100, $500, or even more. And believe it or not, some collectors actively search through thousands of pennies just hoping to find one of these strange mint mistakes. But the story of the 1939 wheat penny gets even more interesting. During the late 1930s, collectors were just beginning to seriously save Lincoln cents. That means some rare high-grade examples survived purely by luck, people putting them away in jars or coin folders. Decades later, those forgotten coins started appearing at major auctions, and the prices shocked everyone. One collector reportedly bought a small jar of old pennies at a flea market, sorted through them at home, and discovered a nearly perfect 1939 wheat penny hiding among them. After grading, that coin sold for thousands of dollars. Just imagine the feeling of discovering that kind of life-changing value in spare change. And here's something even more exciting. Many collectors believe there are still rare 1939 pennies hiding in circulation today. They could be sitting inside old piggy banks, coffee cans, dresser drawers, or coin rolls from the bank. Most people simply don't know what to look for. So remember these quick checkpoints. First, confirm the 1939 date. Second, check for the mint marks D or S. Third, inspect the letters for doubling errors. Fourth, check the color. Bright red coins can be extremely valuable. And finally, inspect the rim and alignment for striking errors. Those tiny details can transform a forgotten penny into big money hidden treasure. And here's the wildest part of this entire story. Collectors are constantly discovering new varieties and unusual examples of wheat pennies. That means the next shocking auction record might come from a coin sitting quietly in someone's pocket change right now. So before you ignore that old jar of pennies at home, take a closer look. Because one small 1939 wheat penny could hold hundreds, thousands, or even life-changing value. And if you enjoy discovering big money coins and hidden treasure in everyday pocket change, make sure you subscribe, because the next coin we reveal might be even rarer, and it might already be hiding in your collection. What if I told you that an old, dirty penny from 1940 could secretly be worth big money? Hundreds, thousands, or even life-changing value. Most people see a dark, worn wheat penny and think it's just 1 cent. But collectors know a shocking truth. Some 1940 wheat pennies have sold for thousands at auction. And the craziest part? One could be hiding right now in your coin jar, an old piggy bank, or a forgotten drawer. The year 1940 was a tense moment in history. The world was sliding deeper into World War II, and everyday Americans were using simple copper pennies for bus fares, groceries, and newspapers. The penny carried the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design created by the talented sculptor Victor David Brenner. Billions of these coins circulated through pockets, stores, and cash registers. But hidden among those ordinary coins were rare varieties, strange mint mistakes, and a few coins that collectors now chase like buried treasure. And if you have a 1940 wheat penny, there are a few simple things you need to check immediately. First, look at the date on the coin, 1940. Then look directly below the date for a tiny mint mark. If there is no mint mark, the coin was made in Philadelphia. If you see a D, it was struck in Denver. And if you see an S, it came from San Francisco. That tiny letter might look insignificant, but sometimes it's the difference between a 1-cent coin and big money. Now here's something that surprises many collectors. The 1940 S wheat penny had a smaller mintage than the Philadelphia version, and finding one in strong condition today is far harder than you might think. Many were heavily circulated during the early 1940s when copper coins were used constantly in everyday life. So when collectors discover a sharp, well-preserved example today, the value jumps dramatically. A typical worn 1940 S penny might sell for a few dollars. But in excellent condition, these coins can reach hundreds of dollars. And in rare, near-perfect grades, some have sold for over $2,000. But the real hidden treasure might not be the mint mark. It might be a mint error. During the early 1940s, coin dies were used over and over again until they wore down or shifted slightly. When that happened, strange things occurred during the minting process. One of the most exciting discoveries collectors look for is doubling. A 1940 double-die wheat penny shows a noticeable doubling in the design, especially in the lettering. Look closely at the words Liberty and In God We Trust. If you see a shadow-like doubling around the letters, you might have something special. Most people would never notice it. But collectors absolutely love these mistakes. Some double-die 1940 pennies have sold for $200, $500, or even more depending on the strength of the doubling, and the condition of the coin. That's a huge jump for a penny most people would ignore. But here's another shocking detail. Take a close look at the color of the coin. Collectors classify copper pennies into three categories: brown, red-brown, and red. Most old pennies today are dark brown because the copper has oxidized over decades. But occasionally a coin survives with its original bright red copper color. That means it was barely circulated and carefully preserved. And those coins can bring serious big money. A high-grade 1940 red wheat penny graded by professional coin grading service has sold for more than $10,000 at auction. Yes, a single penny turning into life-changing value. Now here's another detail that many people overlook, but collectors always check. Look carefully at the rim of the coin. The rim should form a strong, even border around the entire edge. If the rim looks uneven, partially missing, or the design appears shifted toward one side, you might have an off-center strike error. This happens when the coin blank is not properly aligned when struck by the minting press. Some off-center 1940 wheat pennies have sold for $100, $300, even $1,000 or more, depending on how dramatic the error is. Imagine discovering that kind of hidden treasure in a jar of old pennies. But the story gets even more exciting. Collectors often talk about a surprising discovery that happened years ago at a small estate sale. A collector purchased a handful of old coins for just a few dollars. Among them was a bright, sharp 1940 wheat penny that looked almost untouched by circulation. After professional grading, that coin sold for several $1,000s at auction. That's the kind of story that keeps coin hunters searching through rolls of pennies every single day. Because the truth is, millions of wheat pennies are still out there. They hide in jars, drawers, coin rolls from banks, and old family collections. And most people never look closely enough to realize they might be holding big money. So if you ever find a 1940 wheat penny, remember these quick checks. First, confirm the 1940 date. Second, check the mint mark, ***, no mark, D, or S ***. Third, examine the letters for doubling errors. Fourth, check the color of the copper. Bright red coins can mean huge value. And fifth, inspect the rim and alignment for off-center strikes or unusual mint mistakes. Those tiny details could transform an ordinary penny into hidden treasure worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. And here's the most exciting part. Many collectors believe that undiscovered high-grade wheat pennies are still sitting quietly in old coin jars across America and the UK today. Which means the next shocking discovery, the next auction surprise, the next coin worth life-changing value, might already be in your house. So before you spend that old penny, check the date. Because the next big money wheat penny might be hiding in your pocket right now. And if you want to discover more coins hiding incredible value in everyday change, make sure you subscribe, because the next coin we reveal might be even rarer and collectors are paying unbelievable prices for it. What if I told you that an old, dirty penny from 1941 could secretly be worth big money? Hundreds, thousands, or even life-changing value. Most people see a worn wheat penny and toss it into a jar without a second thought. But collectors know a shocking secret. Some 1941 wheat pennies have sold for thousands of dollars, and a few rare varieties are hunted like hidden treasure by serious coin collectors. And the most unbelievable part? One of these coins might already be sitting in your pocket change right now. Back in 1941, the world was changing fast. The United States was on the brink of entering World War II, and everyday Americans were using pennies constantly, for candy, bus fares, and newspapers. These coins featured the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. The reverse side displayed the iconic wheat ears that gave the coin its famous nickname, the Wheat Penny. Billions of these coins were struck in 1941. At first glance, they all looked the same. Old, brown, and worn. But hidden among those billions were rare versions, mint mistakes, and a few coins that today can bring serious big money. If you have a 1941 wheat penny, the first thing you need to check is the mint mark. Look right under the date. If there is no mint mark, the coin was struck in Philadelphia. If you see a small D, it came from Denver. And if you see an S, it was minted in San Francisco. That tiny letter might seem insignificant, but collectors know it can make a huge difference. For example, the 1941 S wheat penny had a smaller mintage compared to the Philadelphia version. Finding one in excellent condition today is surprisingly difficult because most were heavily used during the war years. A typical worn 1941 penny might only bring a few dollars. But if you find one in strong condition, values can jump to $100, $300, even over $1,000. But here's where things get really exciting. Sometimes the real treasure isn't the mint mark at all. It's a mint error. During the early 1940s, coin dies were used repeatedly to strike millions of pennies. As those dies wore down or shifted slightly, strange things started happening. One of the most fascinating varieties collectors search for is doubling. A 1941 double die wheat penny shows noticeable doubling on parts of the design. Look closely at the words, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty." If the letters appear slightly doubled or shadowed, that tiny mistake could turn a simple penny into hidden treasure. Some verified double die examples have sold for $200, $500, or even more depending on condition. And that's just one variety. Now here's another shocking detail that most people never notice. Look carefully at the color of the penny. Copper coins are graded by collectors based on color: brown, red-brown, and red. Most old pennies you find today are dark brown because copper naturally oxidizes over time. But occasionally, a coin survives with its original bright red copper shine. That means it was barely circulated and somehow avoided decades of wear and oxidation. And when that happens, collectors pay big money. A pristine 1941 red wheat penny graded by professional coin grading service has sold at auction for over $10,000. Think about that for a second. A coin originally worth 1 cent, becoming life-changing value decades later. But we're not done yet. There's another clue that can reveal hidden treasure. Look closely at the rim of the coin. The rim should be strong and evenly raised all the way around the edge. If the rim looks uneven or the design seems pushed toward one side, you might have an off-center strike error. These errors occur when the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the minting press. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, these coins can sell for $100, $500, or sometimes more than $1,000. And collectors absolutely love these unusual mistakes because every one is unique. But here's something even more incredible. Some collectors have discovered rare 1941 pennies in the most ordinary places imaginable. One well-known story tells of a collector searching through a simple roll of pennies from the bank. Most of the coins were ordinary, worn and brown. But one coin stood out. It was a sharp, bright 1941 wheat penny with almost no wear. After being professionally graded, that coin ended up selling for several $1,000s. That's the kind of discovery that keeps coin hunters searching every day. Because the truth is, millions of wheat pennies are still out there. They sit quietly in old jars, dresser drawers, estate collections, and bank rolls, completely unnoticed. And sometimes the difference between a 1-cent coin and big money is just a tiny detail most people overlook. So if you find a 1941 wheat penny, remember these simple steps. First, check the date, 1941. Second, look for the mint mark, none, D, or S. Third, examine the letters carefully for doubling errors. Fourth, check the color of the copper. Bright red examples can be extremely valuable. And fifth, inspect the rim and alignment for off-center strikes or other unusual mint mistakes. Those small details could turn an ordinary penny into hidden treasure worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And here's the most exciting part of this entire story. Experts believe that rare wheat pennies are still being discovered today, sometimes in the most unexpected places. That means the next coin worth life-changing value might already be hiding in a jar somewhere, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. So before you spend that old penny, take a second look. Because the next big money wheat penny might be sitting in your pocket right now. And if you want to keep discovering coins with incredible hidden value, make sure you subscribe, because the next penny we reveal shocked collectors, and the price it sold for left everyone speechless. What if I told you that an old, dirty 1942 penny, the kind most people ignore, could secretly be worth big money, thousands of dollars, maybe even life-changing value? It sounds unbelievable, but collectors know the truth. Some 1942 wheat pennies have shocked the coin world at auctions, turning ordinary pocket change into hidden treasure. And the craziest part is this: One of these coins might already be sitting in your home right now. The story begins in 1942, one of the most dramatic years in American history. The United States had just entered World War II. Copper was becoming extremely valuable for the war effort, needed for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. Yet the U.S. Mint was still producing billions of copper pennies featuring the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner. Most of those pennies circulated heavily during the war years. They were used everywhere: vending machines, grocery stores, gas stations. Because of that, many surviving coins today look dark, worn, and dirty. But hidden among those billions of coins are rare varieties, strange mint errors, and a few pieces that collectors now consider serious hidden treasure. If you have a 1942 wheat penny, the very first thing to check is the mint mark. Look directly under the date. If there is no mint mark, the coin came from Philadelphia. A small d means it was struck in Denver, and a tiny s indicates it came from San Francisco. At first glance, that little letter might not seem important, but collectors know it can mean the difference between 1 cent and big money. For example, the 1942 D wheat penny is surprisingly difficult to find in high-grade condition. Many of them circulated heavily during wartime. When collectors find a sharply detailed example today, values can jump dramatically. A worn example might be worth a few dollars, but a well-preserved one can reach hundreds of dollars. And in near-perfect condition, some 1942 D pennies have sold at auction for more than $5,000. That's already incredible for a simple penny. But here's where the story becomes even more shocking. Some of the most valuable 1942 pennies aren't valuable because of mint marks. They're valuable because of mint errors. During the minting process, enormous presses stamped designs into metal blanks at incredible speed. Sometimes the dies shifted slightly or struck the coin twice. When that happened, collectors got something amazing: a double die error. A 1942 double die wheat penny shows noticeable doubling in the design. If you look closely at the words "Liberty" or "In God We Trust," you might see the letters appearing doubled or shadowed. Most people overlook this tiny detail, but collectors immediately recognize it as hidden treasure. Depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition, these errors can sell for $200, $500, even over $1,000. And that's still not the most exciting possibility, because one of the biggest secrets about the 1942 wheat penny involves its color. Collectors classify copper pennies into 3 color categories: brown, red-brown, and red. Most old pennies are brown because copper naturally darkens over time. But sometimes a coin survives with its original bright red copper color. That means it was barely circulated and preserved carefully for decades. When collectors see a bright red 1942 penny in near-perfect condition, they know they're looking at something special. A stunning 1942 red wheat penny, graded by professional coin grading service, has sold for more than $10,000 at auction. Yes, a single penny turning into life-changing value. Now here's another clue you should always check. Look carefully at the rim of the coin. The rim should form a strong, even border around the edge. If the rim looks uneven, thin on one side, or the design appears shifted off-center, you might have an off-center strike error. This happens when the coin blank wasn't perfectly positioned during minting. These mistakes are extremely popular among collectors. Depending on how dramatic the error is, an off-center 1942 penny could sell for $100, $300, or even more than $1,000. Imagine finding something like that in a simple jar of coins. But here's a story that keeps coin collectors searching every single day. Several years ago, a coin enthusiast purchased a small bag of old pennies from an estate sale. Most were ordinary, dark wheat pennies from the 1930s and 1940s. But one coin stood out. It was a beautifully preserved 1942 wheat penny with sharp details and original color. After professional grading, that coin eventually sold at auction for thousands of dollars. That kind of discovery turns an ordinary day into a life-changing moment. And it proves something incredible. Even today, decades later, rare wheat pennies are still being discovered. They hide in jars, drawers, old piggy banks, and even bank coin rolls. Most people never look closely enough to realize they might be holding big money. So if you ever come across a 1942 wheat penny, remember these important steps. First, Confirm the 1942 date. Second, check the mint mark, none, D, or S. Third, inspect the lettering carefully for doubling errors. Fourth, check the color of the copper. Bright red coins can be extremely valuable. And fifth, study the rim and alignment for off-center strikes or unusual mint mistakes. Those tiny details could transform an ordinary penny into hidden treasure worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And here's the most exciting part. Many experts believe there are still undiscovered high-grade 1942 wheat pennies hiding in collections and coin jars across the country, which means the next coin worth big money, maybe even life-changing value, could already be sitting in your house. So before you spend that old penny, take a closer look, because the next hidden treasure wheat penny might already be in your pocket. And if you love discovering coins worth incredible money, make sure you subscribe, because the next penny we reveal shocked collectors worldwide, and the price it sold for might completely blow your mind. What if I told you that an old, dirty penny from 1944 could secretly be worth big money, thousands of dollars, even life-changing value? Most people see a worn wheat penny and think it's just pocket change. But collectors know a shocking truth. Some 1944 wheat pennies have stunned the coin world at auction, selling for unbelievable prices. And the craziest part is this: one of these coins could be hiding right now in your coin jar, a drawer, or even in your pocket. To understand why the 1944 wheat penny is so fascinating, you have to go back to one of the most dramatic moments in history. It was the middle of World War II. Copper was desperately needed for ammunition and military equipment. In fact, just the year before, in 1943, the U.S. Mint made steel pennies instead of copper to save metal for the war. But in 1944, the Mint switched back to copper coins using recycled shell casings from the battlefield. That means the pennies made that year were literally connected to the war effort. These coins carried the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. On the back were the classic wheat stalks that gave the coin its nickname, the Wheat Penny. Billions of these coins were made in 1944. Most circulated heavily, and today look dark, worn, and ordinary. But hidden among those billions are a few coins that collectors consider hidden treasure. And some of them are worth serious big money. Let's start with the first thing you should check. Look at the date, 1944. Then look right below it for a small mint mark. If there is no mint mark, the coin was made in Philadelphia. A D means Denver, and an S means San Francisco. These tiny letters might seem unimportant, but collectors know they matter. For example, high-grade 1944 S wheat pennies can be surprisingly valuable. While circulated examples might sell for only a few dollars, coins in exceptional condition can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But that's only the beginning. Because the real shock about the 1944 wheat penny involves one of the most famous minting mistakes in American coin history. Some extremely rare 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943. That means instead of copper, the coin was made from steel. And that tiny mistake created one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. A genuine 1944 steel wheat penny is incredibly rare. Collectors consider it one of the greatest hidden treasure coins in American history. In fact, one authenticated example sold at auction for over $370,000. Imagine that. A penny turning into life-changing value simply because of a minting mistake. And here's the exciting part. A few of these steel coins are still unaccounted for, which means there's always the possibility that another one could appear somewhere unexpectedly. So how do you check if your 1944 penny might be one of these rare coins? It's actually very simple. Take a small magnet. A normal 1944 copper penny will not stick to a magnet, but a rare 1944 steel penny will stick instantly. That simple test could reveal big money hidden treasure sitting in your coin jar. But even if your penny is copper, don't stop checking yet, because there are still other valuable varieties to look for. One of the most exciting is the 1944 double-die wheat penny. This error happens when the design is accidentally stamped twice during the minting process. If you look closely at the words Liberty or In God We Trust, you might notice slight doubling in the letters. To most people it looks like nothing, but to collectors, that tiny detail can mean hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the condition. Now here's another surprising detail that many people overlook. Look carefully at the color of the coin. Collectors classify copper pennies into three color categories: brown, brown, and red. Most old pennies today are dark brown. But occasionally a coin survives with its original bright red copper color, meaning it was barely circulated. And those coins can bring big money. A high-grade 1944 red wheat penny, graded by professional coin grading service, has sold at auction for over $15,000. That's an incredible return for something originally worth 1 cent. Now here's another clue to look for. Check the rim of the coin. The rim should be strong and evenly raised around the edge. If the rim looks uneven, partially missing, or the design seems shifted to one side, you might have an off-center strike error. These errors happen when the blank coin wasn't positioned correctly during minting. Collectors love these unusual mistakes. Depending on how dramatic the error is, an off-center 1944 penny could be worth $100, $500, or even more than $1,000. And here's a story that keeps coin collectors searching through old pennies every single day. Years ago, a collector sorting through a simple roll of bank pennies discovered something unusual. Among the dark copper coins was a strange, silver-colored penny dated 1944. At first it looked odd, maybe even fake. But after professional testing, it turned out to be one of the legendary 1944 steel pennies. That single coin later sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the kind of discovery that turns pocket change into life-changing value. And it proves something incredible. Even today, rare wheat pennies are still being discovered. They hide in old jars, family coin collections, estate sales, and bank rolls. Most people simply don't realize the hidden treasure they might be holding. So if you ever find a 1944 wheat penny, remember these important steps. Check the date carefully. Look for the mint mark, none, D, or S. Test the coin with a magnet to see if it might be the rare steel variety. Inspect the letters for doubling errors. Check the color of the copper for bright red examples. And study the rim and alignment for striking mistakes. Those small details could turn a simple penny into big money worth hundreds, thousands, or even more. And here's the most exciting thought of all. Some experts believe there are still undiscovered 1944 steel pennies waiting to be found, which means the next hidden treasure worth life-changing value might already be sitting quietly in someone's pocket change, maybe even yours. So before you spend that old penny, take a closer look. Because the next big money wheat penny might already be hiding in your collection. And if you want to discover more coins that could secretly be worth a fortune, make sure you subscribe. Because the next coin we reveal shocked collectors, and the price it sold for might completely blow your mind. What if I told you that an old, dirty 1952 D penny, the kind most people ignore, could secretly be worth big money, hundreds, thousands, even life-changing value? It sounds unbelievable, but collectors know the truth. Some ordinary-looking wheat pennies have shocked the coin world by selling for thousands at auction. And right now, one of those coins could be hiding in a jar, a drawer, or even in the spare change sitting on your table. The story of the 1952 D wheat penny begins during a fascinating era in American history. The United States was moving into the post-World War II boom, and everyday commerce relied heavily on coins. Pennies were everywhere, used for newspapers, candy bars, and bus fares. These coins featured the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design created decades earlier by the talented sculptor Victor David Brenner. At first glance, the 1952 D wheat penny looks ordinary. The Denver Mint struck more than 700 million of them, so millions entered circulation. Most became worn, scratched, and dark brown over time. But hidden among those millions are coins with subtle differences, tiny details that collectors hunt for because they can turn a simple penny into hidden treasure. If you have a 1952 D wheat penny, the very first thing to check is the mint mark. Look closely under the date. You should see a small D, which means the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. That tiny letter confirms you have the Denver variety. But here's where things start to get interesting. Most people never look beyond the date and mint mark. Collectors do. They search for condition, color, and mint errors, and those details can mean big money. Let's talk about condition first. When a coin circulates for decades, it loses detail. The wheat lines on the reverse fade, Lincoln's hair becomes smooth, and the coin turns dark brown. But occasionally a coin survives in exceptional shape, sharp details, crisp lettering, and almost no wear. Collectors call these coins high-grade examples. And when a 1952 D Wheat Penny survives in near-perfect condition, the value can skyrocket. In fact, an extremely high-grade 1952 D Wheat Penny graded by professional coin grading service sold for over $9,000 at auction. That's a jaw-dropping jump from 1 cent to serious big money. Now here's another detail that can transform an ordinary penny into hidden treasure. Look closely at the color of the coin. Copper pennies are graded by color: brown, red-brown, and red. Most old pennies are brown because copper darkens over time. But if a coin somehow avoided circulation and retained its original bright copper shine, collectors classify it as red. These red coins are extremely desirable. A brilliant 1952 D red wheat penny with perfect surfaces can be worth thousands of dollars, simply because it survived decades without losing its color. Now here's something even more exciting. Sometimes the real value isn't in the color or the condition. It's in the mistakes made at the mint. During the minting process, coins are struck by massive presses using engraved dies. Occasionally something goes wrong, and that mistake creates a collectible rarity. One example collectors search for is RPM, which stands for repunched mint mark. In the early 1950s, mint marks were punched into the dies by hand. Sometimes the mint worker accidentally punched the letter more than once. That creates a visible shadow or extra impression of the mint mark. A 1952 DRPM wheat penny shows doubling or shifting around the small d under the date. To most people it looks like a tiny defect, but collectors recognize it immediately. Depending on the clarity of the repunched mint mark, these coins can sell $4.50, $100, or several $100s. But there's another clue you should always check. Look carefully at the rim of the coin. The rim should be strong and even all the way around the edge. If the rim appears weak on one side or the design seems shifted, you might have an off-center strike error. These happen when the coin blank isn't perfectly aligned in the press. Collectors love these dramatic mint mistakes. Depending on how far off-center the strike is, a 1952 D penny like this could sell $4.100, $500, or even over $1,000. Imagine discovering that kind of hidden treasure in a jar of old pennies. But here's a story that perfectly captures why collectors keep searching. A coin enthusiast once bought a small bag of wheat pennies from a flea market for just a few dollars. Most were worn and ordinary, but one coin looked different. It was a 1952 D wheat penny with unusually sharp details and bright copper color. After being professionally graded, the coin turned out to be one of the finest known examples. When it finally appeared at auction, collectors battled fiercely to own it, and the price climbed into the thousands of dollars. That single penny became life-changing value compared to the tiny price it originally cost. Stories like that keep coin collectors searching through rolls of pennies every day. Because the truth is simple. Millions of wheat pennies are still out there. They're hiding in jars, dresser drawers, old family collections, and forgotten boxes. And sometimes the difference between 1 cent and big money is just a tiny detail most people never notice. So if you find a 1952 D wheat penny, here are the 5 things you should check immediately. First, confirm the date, 1952. Second, look for the D mint mark under the date. Third, inspect the mint mark carefully for RPM errors. Fourth, check the color of the coin. Bright red examples can bring serious value. And fifth, examine the rim and alignment for off-center strikes or unusual minting mistakes. Those small details could turn an ordinary penny into hidden treasure worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. And here's the most exciting part. Many collectors believe there are still undiscovered high-grade wheat pennies sitting quietly in coin jars across America and the UK today, which means the next coin worth big money, maybe even life-changing value, could already be in your home. So before you spend that old penny, take a closer look. Because the next hidden treasure wheat penny might be hiding in your pocket right now. And if you want to discover more coins that could secretly be worth a fortune, make sure you subscribe. Because the next coin we reveal shocked collectors worldwide, and the price it sold for left everyone completely stunned.